Good afternoon, buenas tardes. I'm Javier Duran, Professor of Spanish and World Studies and Director of the U of A Confluencenter for Career Inquiry. The Confluencenter serves as a campus-wide research institute dedicated to investigate artistic and scholarly activity by faculty and students representing colleges of fine arts, humanities, and social and behavioral sciences. And we're really excited to have Mr. George Mumford in Tucson today to speak to both the Tucson community and also our U of A campus community. And in fact, we just spent time at 12 High School before we came here, and it was a wonderful experience. We had a lot of the kids engaged and really trying to learn more from Mr. Mumford. And I want to thank our community partners for supporting this event. But before I do that, I want to thank the Confluencenter team, which has been responsible for making a lot of these arrangements possible. Heather, Jamie, Lisa, JC in the back, Deb, and our student workers who are, I don't know where they are right now. And it's a team effort, and we're really pleased to be able to work with our community in these efforts. And I also want to thank Mayor Rothschild and Councilwoman Regina Romero, and of course, El Pueblo Neighborhood Center for hosting us today. And with that, I want to open the floor for Councilwoman Romero to say a few words.
Thank you, Javier. Thank you to the U of A Confluencenter for having us here today. And especially, the wonderful work that the staff individually do in the community and in the center is very admirable. But I'd like to especially thank and congratulate you for extending the opportunity of bringing Mr. Mumford to the South Side and to Ward 1 and in this neighborhood. Bringing him to Pueblo High School and giving those students the opportunity to listen to the wonderful message that he has about mindfulness and creating goals and being able to survive defeat and fear. And that is very, very important. Before I hand the mic over to Mayor Rothschild, I want to share with you one goal that I set when I was 15 that changed my life forever. Forever. And because I took the time to think about the situation and actually set a goal. I mean, we all set goals every day, right? I'm going to wake up tomorrow, I'm going to go to work, I'm going to try and be early, I'm going to exercise tomorrow. Those are things that do change your life step by step, day by day. But I'm talking about the goals that you set that change your life. And it takes some time to think and examine your life to make those types of goals. And at my age, I didn't really know what I was doing at the time. I don't know if you all know me and who I am and my background. I'm the youngest of 6 siblings. I am from a farm-working family. I'm a native Arizona and was born in Yuma, Arizona. Yuma Valley is a farm-working community. It's one of the areas that in the winter really cultivates about 1/4 of the lettuce that our country consumes. And that happens in Arizona, in Yuma. And it's a farm-working community, and my parents worked in the fields. And so did I. And so when I was little growing up, I would hate Christmas break because that meant that I went with my parents and spent the day working in the fields. And that was my entire Christmas break, and I used to hate it. But that's what we did. And so when I was 15, I set a goal. I said, I need to purchase a car so that I can go work. And I can go to high school, and maybe I can party once in a while. And so I set a goal that I wanted to buy a car. So I followed the crops from Yuma to Colorado. And we followed the lettuce crops. And I left to Colorado when I was 15 with a goal in mind. And basically I went with my sister and her husband. And I remember that summer Cruel Summer. Do you guys remember that song? Cruel Summer. It's an 80s song. I remember that summer was so difficult. We woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning, worked in the lettuce fields from sunup to sundown. Very heavy work, very, very heavy work. And I got a rash, a skin rash, because of the pesticides used in the fields. And so I remember going to work, leaving work at 6 p.m., 4 p.m. to 6 p.m., 4 a.m. to 6 p.m., leaving the fields and going to the migrant clinic and being checked like every day. But that summer I made a decision of going to college. I said, I cannot do this forever. This is not going to be my life. I don't want to live like this. And it's an honest, decent job, but it's very hard. Very, very, very hard. And so that night that I made that decision changed my life, because that decision made me go and work every single day to go to college, to get a bachelor's degree, and to change my life. And education for me moved me from poverty to almost middle. And so it really changed my life, and it changed the life of my family too, because even though I was the first one to graduate from college from the University of Arizona, my older sisters continued, right? They continued. They also saw, well, this kid can do it, we can too. And so it really changed the dynamic and the economics of our family. And so that one decision really kind of pinpoints to the same subject that you're going to talk about, George, about mindfulness and thinking of your life in terms of how you're going to live it and planning for it. So with that, I'd like to give my mic over to the mayor that understands and has always understood what education means to changing the life of people that are in need. And I really admire the mayor for investing his time and the bully pulpit that he does have on talking to the community about the importance of K through 12 education, especially K to 3, and reading and promoting reading in our community. So with that, I'd like to welcome Mayor Jonathan Rothschild to the mic.
Thank you. Thanks for all being here. I have a slight personal confession too, which is that when I heard that the person who could teach Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant peace was going to speak, I was not going to miss that no matter what. And so, George, we welcome you to Tucson. Glad to have you back in our community. Hope you have an enjoyable stay. I want to thank Regina Romero. Regina provided really the ability to get the room and provided the kind support. And I want to thank the Confluencenter for bringing this kind of presentation to our community. And Regina's right. A guy of George's stature isn't always down at the El Rio Neighborhood Center. And it's probably a tribute to George and a tribute to the Confluencenter. You know, we just could be sitting on the U of A campus where we wouldn't be out in the community. And so I really want to thank you for coming out to the community, particularly at Pueblo High School. So just a little bit about George before he speaks. George has taken the art of mindfulness to a new level. The art of meditation. We often think about meditation as being in a room alone with your eyes closed, the incense and candles going. George has actually talked about mindfulness in a group setting, in a social setting, in a setting under pressure, how to keep focused, and how to live in the present during those times. He is best known for working with the Chicago Bulls and the LA Lakers in the late 1990s during their championship seasons. And in fact, he has helped those two teams to 11 championships. And I was hoping, since he probably has 11 rings, that he would give me one NBA ring, but I see him bring him today. But he's worked with all sorts of people, Olympic athletes, business leaders, inmates, students. And so to bring that message to the population as a whole is a great thing. I think what you're going to learn today is that mindful meditation isn't just for athletes. Anyone can use it. And if it's used correctly, that's why I'm here, it can improve our focus, reduce stress, boost your immune system, slow aging in the brain, and really it is great for developing concentration and mental toughness. And we all need mental toughness. Another positive effect is it can improve performance. So if you want to make a free throw, great. But if you want to do well on a test, sail through a music solo, what George is going to talk to us about should help us all. And I know that we're all here for different reasons. I'm sure we all have a different reason to be here. But I think the idea is that we all get more at peace with ourselves. And when we're at peace with ourselves, we can make peace with the world. And that's a goal for all of us. George may have his own plug, but I can tell you he has a book coming out soon called The Mindful Athlete, Secrets to Pure Performance. I think it's going to be released next month. And so with that, it is my pleasure to invite to speak to us George Mumford.
Thank you, Mayor, Councilwoman, and all of you, willing participants. I'm assuming. Can you hear me? Willing participants. I'm happy to be here, and we planned this. Javier reminded me we planned this well over a year ago, and I think at the time they asked me for a title, and I think the title was "Learning to Play and Playing to Learn." And we could talk to that. But one of the things I'm interested in is why you folks are here. I mean, what brings you here? I mean, what do you... Can you hear me now? What brings you folks here? You know, I'm curious because I can speak to it, but what I find about the practice of being mindful is it's really hard to talk about what mindfulness is or what being mindful is. And so I'm curious about why you're here, but one of the questions I want to ask is, you folks, how many folks drove here? Okay, how many folks walked here? Or how many folks just, how does apparate or whatever, you know, the, what is that, you know, the wizard, what's his name, but what's his name, Scar?
Harry Potter.
Harry Potter. What's it called, apparate? How many of you apparated here? Okay, or how many people don't know how they got here? Okay, got you. See, because the interesting thing is, I'm just curious, how many of you remember what happened from getting out of your car to getting here? What did you notice?
The heat.
The heat. Or did you just kind of get here and say, well, I don't remember what went on between here and there? Yes.
I was lost. I went across the street and
There
over
you go.
there and over there.
Okay.
I was glad I found it.
Okay.
And it's the nice things with the reading outside.
Okay. Yes. Yes. So if you, okay, so assume you notice how you got here. What kind of mind did you come here with? What was your attitude? What is your attitude now?
Excitement.
Pardon me?
Excitement.
Excitement, yes. And these are questions you can answer, but they're really rhetorical questions. They're really questions that are meant to bring us into the moment. They're meant to make us present to what is happening, or what state of mind we're in, because the state of mind we're in, or what we notice, has an impact on our lives. And I would say for myself, even with this practice, but before I got into this practice, I kind of lived in fantasy. I kind of went through life and I would relate to things, and even now I can find myself relating to things in a mechanical way. Like, if this is the way it was yesterday, so this is the way it is today, and something happens and there's a reaction, especially when you go home and you go open the door and you go in your house. This is where I find that the most challenging place for me to be mindful is at home. Because I'm always already listening, or I'm reacting to what's being asked before it's being asked. And so part of being mindful is just being or embracing or allowing the present moment to come into existence, or to welcome each moment with awareness or mindfulness, which is a way of, the way I describe mindfulness is, it's like a mirror. It just reflects what's there. So it's like mirror mind. It's a process that allows us to be in the moment as it is. So presence of mind, which is this present moment, and then attending to essentials. Now there's many definitions of mindfulness, but I find the most effective working definition is being here now, presence of mind, and attending to essentials. So whatever that is. So obviously if you're playing basketball, Mary and I had conversations about this stuff. I hope you don't mind me sharing it. So if you're sitting in your chair and you're listening to me, what are the essentials for being a good listener, or for really hearing what's being offered? What are the essentials to that? Well, I can tell you, you're thinking about what's going to happen after you leave here. Probably is not a good idea, or focusing on what happened before you got here. Probably not a good idea. Or you might notice that there's expectations of what you expect me to say, or okay, he didn't start off like I expected him to. Or that's why a lot of times I start programs by asking people, what are your expectations? Why are you here? And there's a method to my madness. Why do I do that? Well, because I know there's expectations that you don't even know you have, but if I don't meet them, you're not going to be happy about it. And so what I try to do is put it right up front. Those are your expectations? Well, you ain't getting them met here. Not today. So you know right up front what it is. But a lot of times, we don't even know we have expectations until they're not met. And so part of being mindful is being present to what is. And the first thing is, okay, why am I here? What's my intention? Why am I here? What do I expect? And how can I be totally present to what is being said while it's being said? And so these are kind of questions and understanding, okay, so when we're learning, so I talk about learning all the time, because I think it has something to do with the title. I think it's playing to learn and learning to play. So what I've found is, in learning, the essentials to learning happen to be, and of course, listening is one way to learn. The essentials to learning happens to be what happens, a relaxed mind. Being relaxed, confident, motivated, and interested. So that those qualities of mind, or having a mind in a receptive, or what I call a resource state of mind. So it's in a state where it can receive what is being offered without the overlay of opinions, beliefs, expectations, all of that stuff. It's just a relaxed receptivity of just allowing whatever is happening to speak to us. So it's not saying, okay, I'm listening for this, I'm listening for that. No, I'm just listening. I'm just being still and knowing what is being communicated. And so the interesting thing about communication is that only 7% of it is what is being said. The other 93% is nonverbal. Body language, tonality, facial expression. I'm so happy to be here. And you know that's a lie. But if I say, I'm happy to be here, it's great, and you know, what you say your name was? That is understanding that if we're gonna learn, if we're gonna listen, then it's this willingness to be vulnerable, to be influenced by what is being offered without some comparison of what we already know, because this is what we do a lot. We measure what is being offered based on what we know. Instead of real learning, it's just acting like we don't know anything and having that relaxed receptivity of just hearing what is being said and seeing or knowing what is being said and what it means. Does this make any sense? And so this is real practical stuff. So speaking, and I say this all the time because a lot of times people think mindfulness is being still and being quiet, and that's a part of it. But what I'm offering is this idea that we could be mindful from the time we wake up to the time we go to sleep. And it's just checking in to the body. What's the body feel? Is there tension there? Is there not tension there? Am I tired? How the body feel? Is it tired? Do I want to really get up, or do I want to sleep and hit the alarm again? You know, am I waking up like, oh, it's another day, it's going to be great? Or am I waking up like, oh my goodness, it's going to be a long day, I didn't get my sleep last night, and oh, I'm going to be tired. I watched the NCAAs, or I watched whoever, or watching whatever, or I just couldn't sleep because I was worried about things that are happening that I don't have any control over. So it's just understanding that from moment to moment, we can tune in and say, okay, you know, what's my mind doing? How is it seeing things? What thought processes are going on? How do I feel? And if you're like me, because I was sharing this with the young folks at the high school, I got into this because I had chronic pain. I had just gotten into recovery. I've been clean and sober for 30 years and 6 months. But before that, I was always self-medicating because I was in chronic pain and from sports and other things like that. And then once I wasn't self-medicating, I had experienced chronic headaches and migraine headaches and chronic back pain. And me being cool, growing up in the inner city and being cool, is I'm too cool to be stressed, right? And so sometimes I'd be walking around, well, I'm okay, and my shoulders are up there to my ears and back is hurting. And then my body would say, George, I don't know about you, but there's stress here. And so the body doesn't lie. The body is showing you, or is a reflection of what is happening now. And so I had to learn to say, okay, this is my body process. So, okay, so I have to admit that I'm stressed out. So by admitting it, then I can do something about it. But understanding, because it's not just the stress. There's a conversation going on. There's a story associated with how I'm feeling. So I have this back pain. Okay, well, maybe I shouldn't. You know, I bent down wrong, or it's because when I had that walking cast on when I was in college, threw my back off or whatever. It doesn't really matter what the story is. What matters is, okay, there's tension in the back, and it's usually a reflection of the mind perceiving that what is being requested of me is more than my resources. And so what does I say, okay, so the body can tell me a lot about what's going on. So if the body is calm, the mind is calm. If the mind is calm, the body can be calm. So there's this mind-body process that we can be aware of that allows us to sometimes, when the body is uptight, if we just calm down and just breathe a little bit, and we can let go of what we're ruminating about, the body will relax. And sometimes the mind is going like this, and if the body is calm and still, then the mind can calm down. And so for each of us, what I have to learn for myself is when to use which. So there's a way in through the body, so I might do some Tai Chi, or there's a way in, I might do some yoga, or there's a way where the body's upset, where the mind is just saying, okay. The courage to change the things I can, focusing on what I can control, not what I can't control. So, okay, so maybe I said something to somebody that I shouldn't have said. Okay, I can't take that back, but I can apologize, or I can just say, okay, what were the conditions that allowed me, what was I not seeing that allowed me to react to what was happening rather than respond? And so I start to learn that by a practice of being mindful of the mind, the body, it helps me to understand what's going on and how to relate to the body, like when there's like I have like the chronic pain. There's a way of relating to the pain where I'm not making it more, because before I learned this stuff, somebody would have asked me, I said, yeah, I was in pain all day yesterday. It's not true, but that's my recollection because I'm seeing it mechanically. Then when I started doing this stuff and seeing, okay, oh, this pain here is radiating there, then, I mean, there's a tension, there's a pulling, a twisting, then it's going there, it's going there, and then it goes away. And then I realized, oh, you mean all I have to do is just be with the sensation in the body without letting the story about it create more pain. Like, oh, this shouldn't be happening. Why is this happening? I went to a chiropractor. I'm driving down the street from the chiropractor, and my back sees it. That's not right. I want my money back. But actually, it has nothing to do with the chiropractor. It has to do with my state of mind, which is a reflection in the body. And so when I start to understand, oh, there's a relationship to that. Or maybe I'm trying to do too much. Or maybe I need to just sit down and just think about, oh, what is this? What is it telling me? And usually the body, when it does that, it's telling us we need to rest or we need to attend to something. It's called the general alarm response. It's like a circuit breaker. So when we pull a hamstring, it's telling us, okay, the quad needs to be strengthened, but in the meantime, you need to rest the hamstring. So we have mental fatigue, where we're thinking about some, and a lot of it's about relationships. We're thinking about some relationship we had, and we, it's not going well. He doesn't see things the way, why doesn't he see it the way I see it? He should do this. And it's like, what if you just let it go? What if you just say, okay, time out, I'm not going to deal with that. And this is what I used to have to do when I used to go on retreats. I'd be on retreats, or I'd go to sit, and I'm saying, I'm going to go here because I'm going to resolve my relationship issues. In one sitting. And then I realized, George, how's that working out for you? It's not. The more you resist, the more it persists. And then when I realized, I said, okay, time out, George, we're here for a retreat. Just sit down and then put it on the back, but just set it down. Lay down your burden, just set it aside and say, I'll get back to you later. And then just focus on what's happening. And the amazing thing that would happen is by me just being in the moment and just being with myself, that wasn't a problem anymore. And I remember reading this, it said, don't worry unless you have to. Don't worry as long as you can pray. But if you cannot pray, then you really have to worry. And so what I found is a lot of times we waste time worrying about stuff that hasn't happened yet. You ever had that? Oh man, you worry about stuff all the time. You just sit here, you worry, okay, what's going to happen if Arizona doesn't go to the Final Four? Right? Oh my goodness, they lost. What does that mean? And now all these guys are transferring. We're never going to get there. That's all thought. There's no reality at all. But we worry, and it generates a story. It's fabricated. In actuality, the only thing that happened is they lost the game. That's it. They lost the game. But, we can get attached to it. So you see where I'm going with this? So we start to look at, how are we seeing things? How it's affecting our bodies? So we start to be mindful of what it is we're doing. And is it causing more pain or is it causing more peace? And so we start to understand that there's a way of relating to experience, being mindful where we can create space between stimulus and response. So someone can say something or we see something, and there's this ability to say, okay, I'm just seeing it. What is that? Or seeing it, or seeing myself reacting to it and say, well, why am I reacting to it the way I'm reacting to it? What's my relationship to it? And we start to see that there's some attachment there, or there's this idea that what's happening shouldn't be happening. When in actuality, it's happening. Doesn't mean we have to be happy about it, but we say, okay, so I can relate to it, if I have that space where I can just look at it and say, given what's happening, how do I respond to it in a way that creates more peace, more understanding? So to me, it's always trying to understand or to see things and understand what it's speaking, what it's saying, let it speak for itself. And so just sitting here listening to me with no agenda, if you can, but if you have an agenda, just notice how it affects you. This is what's amazing about this. You can sit back and just be still and know. I just watching. What's the mind doing? How am I thinking? How do I feel? How is it reflected in my body? Do I know I'm sitting? How do you know you're sitting? Because your mind says so? Or because you can feel your body making contact with the chair and the floor? What are you doing with your arms? What are you doing with your hands? How do I have control, or how do I start to control my mind? It's a monkey mind. It's jumping from thing to thing. We had this idea. I had this conversation with this person that said that they could multitask. I said, you're not multitasking. You're going from one thing to the other like a monkey jumping from one branch to the other. And you're not even present at any of those things. You're doing 5 things, but you're not present for any of them. You can only be present to one thing at a time. But we had this illusion, no, I can multitask and I can do this and all that. And then afterwards, we're fatigued and wonder why. When in actuality, if we can fully be with one thing and do what we need to do, then we can jump to another thing and do that. Then jump to the other thing, but it's a consciousness of jumping instead of just going from one thing to the other, because what the mind does is that it will go, if it's pleasant, it wants to hang out. It approaches. If it's unpleasant, it wants to avoid. And if it's neither, it's going to space out. Unless there's, especially if you don't know, we don't know what we want, is the delusion or confusion or dullness of mind, then there's the spacing out. And I say we spend a whole lot of time in that one. So we end up getting, okay, I got from here to there, and I don't remember how I got there. We do this a lot. And so it's like, understand that, okay, so I'm spacing out, okay. Then know that is really important. And so even though we say, oh yeah, well, I like that, but I don't want to go there now. Well, maybe because there's something unpleasant about that. So we start to see that we are programmed as a human being. This is not personal. Approach, avoid, and neither. Now there's a neutral, or there's a neutral, which is not moving towards, not moving away, but being clear about what's happening. That's a different kind of neutral. That's not spacing out, that's being still and knowing. There's a way that we can just relate to it and notice by being still and just knowing that we drop into this, what I call the eye of the hurricane. You know, you see a hurricane, you know, everything's rolling, but there's blue sky in the middle. There's a peace, there's a ease there. We have that inside of us, and how we relate to things, how mindful we are, can create a muscle so that we can be in that space, whether it's a space between 2 thoughts or 2 notes or whatever. We can be in that space where there's no clutter and noise. So we can actually create, we actually can feel and see what's going on. But there's so much clutter and noise around all the time that there's no space to be. And so one of the things that we're cultivating is how to do that, not just when sitting in silence or doing Tai Chi or yoga, but from moment to moment we have this opportunity to just ask ourselves basic questions like, what is my mind doing? What kind of mind am I looking at observing my experience with? If there's greed in the mind, it's going to be you're going to be approaching. If it's, hate in the mind or whatever, you're going to be, or avoidance, because it's you don't want, it's unpleasant, you're going to move away from it. And so we understand that a lot of times we can know just by, like Yogi Berra said, you can see a lot just by observing, right? So a lot of it is just being able to watch and allow things to happen, so that by watching them, we start to get the understanding of how things arise and pass away. How we respond when there's anger in the mind. Okay, when there's anger in the mind, this is my tendency. How does the body feel? Does this make sense? So it's kind of really simple that day to day we can ask, well, what's my mind doing? What's my intention? I ask people that all the time when they come to me and want to talk, well, what's your intention? What's your motivation? What's your purpose? And then, if you know what your purpose is, then what's the best way to achieve your goal? What's what we call skillful means? What's the best way to do it? Now, the interesting thing about that is if you think about how we learn how to walk, right? You watch a baby learn how to walk, they get up, they fall down, right? Get up, they fall down. How do they learn how to walk? Trial and error, right? And they seem to have enthusiasm about that. Now, think about us. If we try to learn how to walk now, first time we fall down, we're going to look around and see who saw us fall. That's interesting. But if we could have that childlike mentality or sense of wonder of just saying, okay, I'm going to fall down. So why are you surprised when you fall down? That's part of the process. So when you learn how to do things, if it's a sport or learning a new skill, you're going to make mistakes. The problem is, are you aware of making a mistake and saying, okay, it's feedback. What do I need to change so that the next outcome will be better? But it's going to be repetition, repetition, repetition. Like I talk about it like wisdom and mindfulness working together. It's like putting a puzzle together. So you get one piece of the puzzle, you put it on, and you go over it, you observe it many, many times, and each time you stitch a little bit more awareness, a little bit more knowledge about it. And then at some point, when the conditions are right, when you have all the pieces in place, or you have a critical mass, then you say, oh, okay, that's a teapot. And then you can fill in the other. But that's what we can do from moment to moment. And that most of the time, if we observe our mind, we will notice that there's a mechanical way of observing experience, but we're not really present. And that, like I said, we have these expectations. So, okay, the last time I came to this, it's like when you get a new phone. So the old phone was you do certain things. You get the new phone, you do it. You say, oh, this phone's not working. How come it doesn't do it? It's a new phone. It's a new instructions. This is today. That was yesterday. And that's how we relate to life, because that's the way the reptilian brain works. You know, because we needed that at one point where, you know, you walk across the street, the car's coming. You don't have time to say, oh, should I move or not? The reptilian brain moves us out of the way. So we need to know when to let that happen. But then when somebody says something to us and we perceive a threat, and the reptilian brain goes into fight or flight, then all of a sudden our jaws get tight, and either we give them the silent treatment, or we either fight or we flee. And sometimes there's the other one where we're afraid and we freeze. It's not personal, it's what the nervous system does, but it's our perception of reality. So if we perceive something as a threat, even though it's not, the mind-body system is going to react that way. And so if you're in stress all the time, why wouldn't you have migraine headaches? When you say, okay, what's my body doing? Why am I stressed? How am I seeing things? Oh, you mean I don't have to see it that way? Oh. So the calmness, the steadiness of mind can come from understanding how things are, seeing things clearly and saying, okay, when this happens, this is going to happen. So why am I surprised when something happens, when that's the nature of things? So we're going to get old, we're going to die, we're going to get sick. But yet, when we get old, when someone dies, and we get sick, we act like it's not supposed to happen. It's crazy. But it is the way it is, but there's not the scene. Okay, this is what happens. Things are changing all the time. Except for death and taxes, but everything else is changing. So if we can choose to say, okay, things are changing, so given they're changing, why don't I choose how I want to be in that change? So that there's this ability, but just paying attention moment to moment, really focusing. We do this for some things we're interested in. We're really good at focusing and zooming in and seeing things and developing expertise. But a lot of that is a consequence of presence of mind and attending to essentials and knowing what to tend to. And that's the sign of an expert. They know, like the pilot that landed the plane on the Hudson River, they practice that. So they call it situational awareness. It's understanding what is important, what to focus on. And so the experts know there's one or two things to focus on, like when you're flying the plane, it's a good thing to know that most of the accidents occur on landings and takeoffs. So So if you're facing out the other time, those 2 times you really need to be present. So 76% of the situational awareness errors are based on not knowing what to focus on. And then the next part of it is the comprehension or the perception of what's happening. Okay, I do this, this is what's happening. So understanding what the perception is and then being able to know what to focus on, getting clearly comprehending what's happening and what the consequences are, and then projection, knowing, given that, what we're going to, what the ultimate or potential outcome could be. So it's not like not being in the moment, but being clear about the conditions for achieving your goal. So if you know learning or listening is just having this relaxed receptivity, it's the same for any sense data that comes in, any thought, any sound, any taste. It is the same drill. The mind has this tendency to want to know or to be aware of the object, but there has to be not just the object, but there has to be consciousness there. So how many of you have had the situation where you're watching TV and somebody talks to you and say, yeah, okay, but you never hear what they're saying, right? And of course, you could be on the other end of that where you're talking to somebody who's watching TV and they ain't hearing you. Well, in order to hear, there has to be, the ear has to work, there has to be an object, the sound, and there has to be consciousness or knowing. So the mind has to be paying attention. So that's why everything's happening, but we only notice what we pay attention to. So it's paying attention, but then knowing, paying attention in a certain way, and this bare awareness of just seeing what's there without the overlay of our views, opinions, associative thinking, self-reference, which is a huge one. Well, what does this have to do with me? That's a huge one. And so we start to see that from moment to moment is an opportunity to look at the mind, look at the body, and ask the question, is my mind, do I have a mind with compassion? Do I have a mind with generosity? Or do I have a mind with greed or with ill will? Or a mind that doesn't know what's going on? So when we go into things, it's important to have an understanding of some wisdom, which can come in the form of information, intelligence, or reflecting on, okay, what makes sense, or rational thought. And then the third thing is what we call direct experience, or intuition. So I might say to you, okay, this is how the mind works. You're sitting here, sound comes through the window, if it's a fire engine going by, and the sound comes in and you're trying to be quiet, you can make that noise. It's just a sound. But if you perceive it like, oh, that's a fire engine, it's making noise, and it's bothering, it's annoying. It's not annoying. We have to go out and get engaged in it to make it annoying. But if we just say, oh, it's just a sound, then it goes away and we have that peace. We have that peace. We're in the eye of a hurricane. And so that happens to us all through life. Things, through the day, things come up and we can observe it. I'm not saying that something bad happens and we just say, oh, that's interesting. I'm just saying we learn from it. That makes sense? I don't want to talk a lot more, but you get my drift that mindfulness is something you can do from this moment on, and it's just a matter of being present in the moment and attending to the essentials. So knowing what the key elements are. So when we talk about basketball, playing defense, see man involved. It's like if somebody's talking to you, well, how about acting like you're listening? How about just being still and just let them talk and just see what it says? And even though it may not be what you want to hear, just hear what they're saying so you can at least understand where they're coming from. And we all know what it feels like when somebody is deep listening to us. Where actually, even when I'm talking, there's a listening that we create that allows people to express themselves. We can fully be present with no agenda and just being there for the other person and just listening to what they're offering. There's a healing there for ourselves and others. This makes sense, and this is where a lot of it is a lot of reactivity instead of knee-jerk, instead of stimulus, and then, okay, how do I want to respond here? Given you're not walking across the street and this is not a life and death situation, we can all just pause and just listen and say, okay, well, what is this? What's happening? Why am I seeing it this way all the time? What would happen if I thought differently? Or what if I saw stress as a challenge rather than as a curse? What if I started observing things with the happiness advantage, with an optimistic mind, with a mind that's happy, that's full of wonder and the mystery of life? What happens when we're relaxed, when we're confident, when we're motivated? Make sense? And so that's a way of practicing that's a lot easier than the way I learned was this war, you sit there and you have greed in the mind because I wanted to be enlightened yesterday, and my body's tight and I'm sitting there and it's a struggle, and I don't realize that I'm meditating or I'm being aware of my experience with unwholesome mind state. That if I say, okay, so if I can let go of the greed and just be there and not have an expectation that I'm meditating in order to get something, or just being still or just observing for no reason other than to let it speak to me. That's a different mind state, different energy. So I know I'm throwing a lot at you, and I'm kind of in there, and I'd like to open it up for Q&A as long as time we have, but I wanted to, if it makes sense, we can ask questions, but we have this ability to be mindful from moment to moment. Yes?
Can I ask 3 questions?
Yes.
First of all, do you have a website?
Yes, there's a website for the book called mindfulathlete.org.
.org?
Yeah,
Mindful Athlete?
one word, .org.
Secondly, I'm going to try and explain myself and be hopefully succinct and brief. I'm a brand new meditator, and it has caused, I think, some rather remarkable changes in my behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Unsolicited.
Mm-hmm.
It introduced me to a lot of reading and to self-hypnosis.
Yeah.
I want to know, if I can, what you think about self-hypnosis for athletes.
What do you mean by self-hypnosis?
Well, there's all kinds of stuff on the web about self-hypnosis. In fact, I was introduced to it originally in another life when I was a corporate person, where we would cure behavior problems, negative behavior problems, with an employee that otherwise was expensive. And rather than fire him, it started with a psychotherapist and then a guy that taught him meditation, and then it ultimately, in several cases, went to self-hypnosis. I have, since I've started meditating, got on the internet, and I've run into stuff on self-hypnosis, got some books out and stuff, and realized that it's a lot more complicated than I cared to delve into that aspect of it. But I had some remarkable changes in my playing behavior just from the few times that I tried it. See the ball, turn your head, rotate. You're an athlete, you know what loading means?
Yeah.
Well, in tennis, excuse me, but a lot of times I'm sure as in basketball, holy moly, you don't have time, it just has to happen.
Right.
My problem is, why doesn't it happen all the time?
Why doesn't what happen?
That stuff that happens. And when I hit a ball and it's a killer, I never thought about it.
Well, there you go.
Uh-oh.
See, you said it, self-hypnosis, but I see it as directed thought.
It's entirely possible.
Yeah, follow through.
That's why I'm
move your
here.
feet. Yes, and that sort of thing. So what happens is the directed thought, you direct your attention to something, or whatever you think, that's where your mind will go. I'll give you an example. Think of the palm of your right hand. Where does your mind go? Palm of your left hand. Palm of your left foot. So if you say, see, hit the ball, under control, rhythm flow, let it go, whatever, move your feet, you're directing yourself. And so sometimes you can do it, and we're doing this all the time, but it's called directed thought or applied thought. That's what it is. And so sometimes we have to do that to be present, but then after we get there, it's sustained. It becomes the same thought. And then when we sustain the thought, there's this joy or this excitation that arises. And if we continue to be present, then it becomes happiness, okay, or some kind of joy. And then the fifth part of that is one-pointedness, concentration. So this happens as a consequence of just being still and knowing, but it's the energy in which you do it. If you do it like with greed, it's striving, but if you just allow it to happen, and sometimes they talk about hypnosis is having an intention, being relaxed, and then allowing it to happen. See, that's the interesting thing. The more I practice, the more I realize life is about forming the intention and then getting out of the way and allowing it to happen. This is playing at high level, or, you know, in martial arts, talk about mushin, or no mind. As if you have an empty mind, then it will reflect what's happening. You know, if you watch that, the last, Last Samurai with Tom Hanks, and he's getting his butt kicked, and the little boy says, mushin, or no mind. And what he was saying is, listen, dude, you're thinking, when you think, and it's interesting, but if you reflect on this, because I do this when I walk around my block. If I walk around my block and just, well, where I go, yeah, I walk that way, and if I'm not thinking and I'm just being with it, the body, and just letting it move, time is faster. If I'm thinking, it slows me down. Break a rhythm. You can see that when somebody's thinking. You can see, I'm like, what am I doing? There's no rhythm with thought. But if you just let the body move, then there's a rhythm, there's a grace, there's an ease. But it just does itself. And they talk about it happens. So there's no doer there. It's just happening. You follow me? But at first you got to direct and say, move this, focus on this. But at some point, because it takes over, it has an energy, it becomes effortless. You talk about being in the zone. And when people talk about there's nobody there, time is altered. And okay, where'd the time go? I can go another 2 rounds. So that's what I'm saying. So we have these ideas, what we call things, or we put concepts on them. I don't go with the concept, I go with what is. Doing it, because the concept creates a construct. You get what I'm saying? But we do need concepts on some level, but at the end of the day, it's just being. It's just, okay, move here, move there, be here now. Okay, everything's okay. I'm all right. In breath, out breath, sitting, be here now. Those could be spots that bring us back to the mind is going to go wherever the thought takes it. Make sense? Interesting, but when we start getting into that and start reading that stuff, I only talk about what I know, but I know a little bit about hypnosis and whether you call it self-hypnosis or not, because sometimes the connotation of hypnosis is to do something without knowing it. You know what I'm saying? Like somebody hypnotized you, they control you, or you do something, and I'm not saying it, but I'm just saying that that's a notion that some people will fall into. And what I'm saying is, what this is about is being present and being clear about what's happening.
I just want to make this one comment about that and preface it with the fact that I'm a neophyte meditator. And in the little bit of experience I had with self-hypnosis, it felt just like meditating.
It's fine. And all I'm saying to you is if it works for you, then do it. You can call it whatever you want. But the idea is it working? And if
I
it's
thought
working
you were
for
going to enlighten me.
That's not my job. That's your job. All I do is point to the moon, and if you get enlightened, that's on you, brother.
Yes.
I hear you. But I appreciate it. Anybody else? Yes?
I'll defer to them.
I just wondered about his question about not being in that state at all times.
What do you mean?
He was saying, I can do these practices and at times it creates that result you're talking about. But why doesn't it happen all the time? And so I was thinking about just like causes and conditions being part of what's going on, and how even at a talk like this, there's often an underlying sense of greed that you're going to tell me how to get into the ideal state at all times, instead of kind of a relationship with what you're saying, you know, having a much broader perspective than that.
It's not linear.
And
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. But here's the thing, things are always changing.
And how do you get motivated though, if it isn't greed? I I mean, what would even make you want to get better at your sport so that you could win more or be a winner? Or like what motivates you if all you're doing is, your only job is to be present to the nakedness of what is?
Yeah,
Where does motivation
well, we're talking about having a desire. So it's an excellent question. So if your intention is to do something, so you say you intend to be the best, right? So then you do the things to be the best, but you're not running your head up. I got to be the best. I got to be the best. You just form the intention, and then you allow it to happen.
But the whole thing is informed by the greed that you formed the intention.
Yeah, but there's a difference between greed and desire or wanting to do something. Now, this comes back to what's your motive. If it's a selfish motive, there's nothing wrong with it, because self-interest is fine, but if it's doing it for the greater good, it's a different energy. So you can do it either, but when we talk about desire or being greedy, we're talking about not wanting a little bit, but wanting it all the time, 24/7. You know, like greed is an energy to it, but desire doesn't have to be greed. If you get what I'm saying. You understand what I'm saying? So greed is like approaching it like your life depends on it. There's a certain energy with it. Like, you know, if I don't get it now, it's not going to happen. And you know, and my self-esteem is tied up in it. Other than having a desire to do something, but you know, whether you achieve it or not, you're still you. It doesn't form who you are.
And which again is probably informed by causes and conditions.
But that's what I'm saying.
One's desire-
Everything, that's what it is. That's exactly
It's
right.
a bigger picture.
You create under the right conditions, these things are going to happen. When the conditions change, the outcome's going to change. And so a lot of the conditions are informed by how we think and how we see things, how we feel. So, or how our mind is. So if you want things to change your mind. And sometimes changing your mind doesn't mean you'll get what you want, but at least you'll see that if you don't get what you want and you keep acting like it should be happening, there's a lot of suffering with that. There's a lot of attachment. So you'll see that whatever we cling to, if you know, in ignorance, that's the cause of suffering. But things can arise and go, and if you accept, okay, you know, like me, I hurt my ankle a couple of years ago, still not healed. I call it 100,000 miles. It's an old injury, you know, it's wear and tear. You know, I tend to do what I need to do, but I'm not going to let it affect my happiness. You get what I'm saying? So it's like if I want it, if my desire, my greed is to want it to be better, that's suffering. Instead of saying it is what it is, do the best I can, and then I accept that things change. My ankle was fine, and now it's in a different condition. Make sense? So everything is arising and passing away. That's one of the impermanence. That's what it is. But if you can accept that, there's no suffering in knowing that it's okay for it to arise and pass away. And when we don't like it, and we have an opinion about it, then that's suffering, but we can let go of that opinion. Make sense? So, yes.
When did you make a breakthrough understanding the transition from not knowing what mindfulness is and then understanding it?
That's a good question. I think for me, I don't know how many years ago it was, if it was 5 years or 7 years ago, but at some point I realized, George, you're making this way too complicated. You know, I'm struggling and I'm just forceful effort to be mindful. My mind goes away, bring it back. And then I realized at some point, dude, it's really simple. Your mind goes away, so, oh, okay. Just bring it back. It's accumulation. See, this is the thing. Like I talked about, so I'm working on the puzzle, and each time I get a piece of the puzzle, but then at some point it makes sense. I get the right piece, and then I get the picture. I get the understanding. So it's hard to know, because a lot of this is what they call non-declarative learning. You don't know you know something until you know it. You understand what I'm saying? And if you try to explain it, you're really in trouble, but you can't explain it. You understand what I'm saying? But you can point at it. But that's a good question. I think it's accumulation of what I'm saying is when I started realizing that I could be mindful from moment to moment, and it's the continuity of mindfulness that's the powerful mindfulness, rather than just when I'm sitting. If I sit 4 hours a day or sit 15 minutes a day, then I get up, and then I'm as mindless as I was before. I sat down, oh, I gotta go get to work, you know, now I'm late. And then you go off, instead of saying, no, there's a continuity of it. So, okay, so can I bring that quality of mind into everything and just be receptive and observing what's happening without reference to self. And when I do reference self, it's okay, just notice the difference in the quality of being when that happens. So it's accumulation of sitting, studying, of continuity of practice, understanding, talking about it. If you want to learn something, you teach it, so I teach it, so that helps. You get what I'm saying? So, and it just happens when the conditions are right. The lady was saying back there, that you keep, but you don't know that you're building up a momentum. And see, that's the way I learned about the mindfulness and the right effort, which is diligent effort, this continuous application of balanced effort. So it's not like this, but it's just steady, and then you build up a momentum. So I would say life is a marathon. And that this is why we're like the mindful athlete, and you train for a marathon. So you have to do training, and the training is ongoing. You don't, one marathon. Life is, like, the thing that's nice about sports is you usually have a beginning, a middle, and an end. But life, you don't have that. When there's an end, there's an end. But we go from day to day, and that makes it hard. How do we manage to keep being present to the same thing over and over with the same enthusiasm? Winston Churchill said that success is going from failure to failure without losing enthusiasm. So that's our challenge. How do we stay fresh? How do we stay enthusiastic about this self, and it's self-discovery. So we go inside, we learn about ourselves, but then we have, so I give you a teaching, but then you have to have the experience of it. That's the direct experience. Then it becomes a conviction rather than this belief, because you've experienced it, and then you continue to experience it. And it keeps building and building. You become wiser and wiser and more mindful, more right effort. So there's no limit to what you could do. So it's not like you achieve something, you just get there, but it's a marathon. It's a journey, and be in each step of the journey, enjoy that, instead of waiting to get to the end result, because the end result keeps moving further and further away. And of course, in this case, you don't want the end, because if you want the end, you're dead. But it makes sense, but just like an athlete trains for a sport, we got to train for life. We have to train the mental inner life, because if it's not exercised, like any other muscle, it will atrophy, it will be weak. So we have to train ourselves to be present over and over, and that there's different levels of presence and awareness and wisdom, and that we learn. But it's a progressive thing, and it's like the puzzle. You get a piece, but you have to have that persistence, that diligence to keep doing it, even though you don't know what it's going to be. But there's the faith of continuing on the path. And at some point, after going over the terrain, each time you go over it, you pick up a little bit of something. And at some point, you keep stitching things together until wisdom arises. Make sense? Yeah. Okay. Yes, do you want to say something?
See you again.
See you.
Good conversation this afternoon. And so it left me thinking, earlier you were at Fellow High School, governing board member, so of course I have to ask the question, and not so much in how do we meet for myself, but how do we meet for our kids that we represent. My little guy over here. So the question is, and I'll preface it by saying, the old adage of, if I knew then what I know now, we just recently finished up a conversation we had with kids around the leadership model that Cesar Chavez left us. And Ms. Romero and I actually spoke to about 200-300 kids over at Desert High School.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that we talked about was these pillars of leadership. And if I asked the kids, if you could do one thing without it, and you knew you couldn't fail at it, what would that be? So we kind of shared some ideas, and one of them was that I wish we could impart all the knowledge that we have on them at an early age, so that we can make some of those mistakes. So I see some of the young guys back here playing ball, and this is the way out, right? The way to the big time, and seeing all your experiences with all the professionals that you work with. So how do we get young people to understand? How do we get them to understand the idea of if I'm doing what I know now? So we get athletes in their freshman year,
Yep.
At the high school level, of course. And then, of course, they're always getting into a freshman situation in college, possibly, or maybe even go right to the big times. But the idea is you start them off early, and for us, athletics is almost a hook to get them involved in academics, which is the other option in case you do get injured and you can't play ball, and you might be able to be a speaker like yourself or a coach. So the idea then is how do we impart it? Because not all of our students are going to be athletes, but all of them bring something to the table. So how do we bring them all to the table with that mindset? I mean, how do I for one, don't call it meditation. I think we're talking about self-hypnosis and all this other stuff. I just wake up in the morning and I lay in bed for a good 20 minutes. That might be because I'm Mexican-American or whatever, but the idea is I lay in bed and I think about the day.
Yeah.
And I think about the mistakes I made the day before. And then I kind of go in with some intention. So one of the things I didn't share with you over lunch was something that my mom said, you know, when opportunities are offered to some of our students, the question that she used to say is, if common courtesy isn't offered, then you mistake it. So how do we teach intentionality to young kids coming into our freshman year that might be involved in athletics and might not be involved?
Yeah, well, here's the interesting thing. The athlete is a person. So, and I say in the student. And so what I say is, the secret, one of the secrets of performance is to be mindful all the time, whether you're playing sports or academics. So your academic, you're being mindful playing basketball can transfer over to being mindful when you do your academics, when you're engaging with family members and stuff like that. Now here's the interesting thing about mistake. We call it error attribution. What we attribute the error to. So the elite athlete attributes the error to some skill, knowledge, or experience they don't have that they can get. The novice experiences the error to they're not good enough, or they're too short, or they're the wrong gender, or they're in a depressed situation. People don't recognize them as a human being. It could be any of that. So it's really about the mistakes are just feedback to what you need to address. So I would say mistakes are necessary. And for us to say, I wish I knew now I wish I knew then what I know now, that is judgmental because you had to go through that to know what you know now. So that's one way of looking at it. So it's how we view things that determines whether it gives us more energy or zaps us because we had a missed opportunity and we're never going to get it back. So we reminisce about it, we feel frustrated about it, that's affecting our current state of being. And so it's just realizing that under the right conditions it's happened, and the attitude could be, it is what it is, you learn from it, but make peace with it. Because otherwise you project that into the future. You see what I'm saying? So it's like myself, okay, so I had to go through everything, I had to be injured and do all that stuff. I don't think about, well, I wish I had this back then, because I've accepted the fact that all of that is part of how I got to where I am, and it's more important what I do now than what I did before, what I might do in the future. But if I can have a vision, a possibility for me being free, me being more mindful, me being more compassionate, then that will drive my thoughts, my feelings, my actions to be honest. Because see, I'm committed to releasing the divine spark in all human beings. So that's the game I'm playing. Okay, and so to do that, then once I commit to it, and once I'm open to it, with the mindfulness and the wisdom, it's just knowing that I'm going to make mistakes. I'm not going to be able to do it perfectly, but it's the process. It's the building the momentum of the marathon, of building and keep going, continuing to apply what I need. But it's the intention and the energy that I bring to it that's the most important. And that's why the mind state in which I am operating is huge. Because if I have the right mindset, or a wholesome state of mind, or mind is transformed to do good, then it will be natural for you to do good because I programmed it to be wholesome. Make sense? Yeah. Someone else?
The spiritual component, you haven't mentioned the connection with Greece.
Yeah. But can you feel the spirit? Can you feel the spirit?
Yes.
Okay. All right, but see, now we want to put it in the context. Go ahead and ask a question, but I just said that for a reason. Go ahead.
Well, in the motivational meditation, how do you see the spiritual component in it?
Okay, so if you read the Bible, what does it say? Be still and know.
Know that I'm God.
Okay, and if you, so to me it's like, see that power plug over there?
Yeah.
Just connect to the power. So when you're in a wholesome state of mind and when you're in the moment, you're coming from that eye of the hurricane, there's the spirit of once you do something, it's the spirit of connectedness. You experience the web of life, being part of it, not separate. See that illusion of separateness, you can go beyond that. So it is spiritual in the sense that it has the energy. And the energy is one of inclusion or one of expansiveness. Make sense? So we can call it spiritual or whatever, it's a spiritual thing, yes. It's all, Edgar Casey said, the spirit is the life, the mind is the builder, physical is the result. So it's really about connecting to pop the energy or the one source. And we're already connected. What I'm really talking about is being conscious of that connection. That's a very different thing than I'm trying to connect to it. No, you're already connected, you just don't know it. And how we think, how we be, how we see determines how much we can have conscious contact. Because in the 11th step in the program, they talk about solitude prayer and meditation to improve conscious contact of a higher power, or, praying only for knowledge of will for us and the power to carry that out. So that's one tradition. There's another tradition that might, is your Sufi, you're dancing and you're experiencing the energy or whatever. And in the Bible says, be still and know. So in the Buddha, it's talking about we already have Buddha nature, it's already there. We have to get it, but there's a way of relating to life, because there's suffering, but there's a cause of suffering, and then there's a path that leads, there's an end of suffering, and then the path that leads the end of suffering is mindfulness is the heart of that. But there's other qualities that are involved in just being able to understand things. Because we can think clearly about things, there's calmness. We understand, this is how this works, then you're calm. We're not calm because we don't understand. But once we understand, there's calmness there. So wisdom can be, I talk to people all the time. I said, the ultimate stress reducer is wisdom. And so instead of seeing stress as something that shouldn't be, see it as a challenge. Okay. And it's only through stress that our latent abilities are tapped and reflected, and that's my life. I had to have there's kids around here, I call it AOF, method of motivation. You know what that is? Ass on fire. I like to say, I did this because I was cool and I was intelligent. No, my butt was on fire, and I said, okay, that's not working. Maybe I'll do something else. So everybody else has their own mode of motivation, but it's important for us to understand how we get motivated, how we get clear on something. So each of us has to do it in our own subjective experience. So whatever I offer you, I'm also saying, see if it's true, and then you have to do it in your own way, subjectively. You got to go inside and do it. You can't do it out here. It has to be in the heart. It has to be inside. Make sense? Yes?
I have a question. I was going to ask you, it's about Michael Bryant. I'm going to ask you, what did you do and what did you teach them to be so great?
What did I teach them? That's a good question. I'm not sure who was teaching whom. How's that? But here's the same thing I'm offering here is the same thing I offered them. It's presence of mind and attending to essentials. So if you look at Michael, MJ, he is, and I worked with Phil Jackson's team for a lot of years. I work with the Knicks now. It's mastering the fundamentals. You do that every day. You master the fundamentals so that it becomes automatic, so that it becomes, they call it muscle memory, but it's really a neural net in the brain. If you keep doing things, because if you look at the negative habits you have, that's how it's formed that way. So if you're present and you continue to be present and you continue to exercise being mindful, being, understanding how things work, and then also understanding the quality of mind is really important. And then Michael, he thrived in chaos. He thrived, and when the more stressful it got, the better he got. So he saw it as a challenge. And you see, I quit because I didn't have any challenges. And I didn't have that motivation. But it's the stuff that I'm teaching you. It's understanding that there's a masterpiece inside. That how you relate to life, and there's a trial and everything, but there's certain qualities or certain principles involved in being present. And that if you do those principles, then your masterpiece will be expressed. So all I did was chip away to help them express their masterpiece. But they were willing, and it's interesting because those are my best students. Isn't that interesting? Huh? Yeah, but it's not, it ain't got nothing to do with me on some level. It's their willingness and see, because it's like when the student is ready to teach will appear. That means when you're ready to learn something, or when you're committed to excellence, you will find excellence. If you're committed to misery, you will find misery. So whatever you're seeking is what you get. So if you seek victimization, learn helplessness, that's what you're going to get, because you are creating that. That's the thing we got to get. Whatever we hold in mind becomes our reality. So if we see ourselves as masterpieces, and if I speak to you as if you're a masterpiece, that's a different energy than me speaking to you as somebody who needs me to fix something. You understand that? And that was my message at the high school today, was that you all are masterpieces, and that's how I see you, and that's how I see myself, and that there's a way of relating to experience that will allow that masterpiece to break out. Make sense? Anybody else? Okay, thank you very much.